Your pain, or any pain, isn't worth any more than the words we can dig up to describe it. Tell me of the knife, but make it pretty. Tell me of the collarbone reaching out of the skin like a branch, but make it soft. Everyone wants us to spill poetically, in a way that goes down easy. They want us to speak of maps by referring to their borders, but not by what's inside of them. I dreamt you still named. I dreamt you naked. I dreamt you leaking from the knife's advances. I dreamt you siphoning out your own life through the needle. I dreamt your spine crumbling like a palace of cards. I dreamt every dead person I know was the same and lived in the same cramped alley of my skull. I will tell these stories until the words materialize and I can stop up a wound. I know. I might as well try to gather rain with a sieve, but I need to try. I've been walking around with a fist full of consonants, believing the dead are like windows. This poem and other poems, a handful of rocks I want to shatter each of your faces. Oh, family, oh, friends like you might walk out from behind those gaps in your smiles. Sometimes I hold a word to my ear like a conch shell. Sometimes I curse the ocean for what it cannot or will not say. I surround these bodies with sentence after sentence, and the words begin to chant like a crowd. The words become music. The words become an orchestra of flies, and I almost believe you will wake up, all of you, together. I almost believe your name will slither its way back into your body, and you'll kick back to life like a junkyard cutlass, and you will walk out of your own funerals laughing. How absurd, this choir of weeping, these caskets planted in the dirt like seeds. It is so cold in this winter's lexicon, this language of nothing, of once was or never will be again. Sometimes I want to kill my uncle for being a more miserable drunk than I was. Sometimes I want him to die already so I can write about it. Sometimes I too want to be a poem. I don't want to be this pain with a language used to unearth it. Sometimes I curse archaeologists for their basic tools telling us basic things. Sometimes I think scientists are lazy. I too could dig a heart out of a chest, but what do any of you know about removing the history from a body without killing it? Just yesterday, scientists discovered a new ligament in the human knee. Just yesterday, I found out I can't sleep for a whole new set of reasons. Just yesterday, I wrote, and 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 I kept writing because I've committed to not killing anyone, especially myself. Just yesterday, I found new ways to say, I miss you. My God, how I miss you all. There are generally two responses that I get to my poetry. I like that poem, insert reason, or I like that poem, but. I like that poem, but why don't you ever write about joy? I like that poem, but why don't you ever write about, beautiful things? You seem so happy. Why are your poems so sad? Questions like these are constantly hovering around artists, but especially writers. Audiences always want to know why so-and-so is always writing about so much pain or darkness or oppression or trauma or grief. Listen, I'm not an expert on any experiences other than the ones that I've had. I can't tell you what it's like to experience racialized or gendered oppression or violence. I can't tell you what it's like to experience homophobia or transphobia. I can only tell you about loss, addiction, and mental health as experienced by a white, straight, cisgendered male in America. Though I can tell you that negative experiences, regardless of what they are exponentially more ingrained in us than positive ones. Trauma is cumulative, and trauma of any kind, even if it is just a singular event, does not simply happen to then just disappear. It comes back to us again and again. One of my closest childhood friends was murdered by his mother. Of course, just one time. But he dies in my memory each week, and in my bones each morning. And I grieved him again when I buried the next boy, and I grieved them both when I buried the boy after that. When I was 17, I was in a car accident as the front passenger. A friend of mine was taking a left turn on a green light on our way to school. She forgot to yield to oncoming traffic, and the passenger side of the vehicle was struck by a delivery van. I'm 27 years old. I've ridden in the car thousands of times, and I've taken that many more left turns on green lights in my life. 10 years after the accident, and every time I'm the passenger in the front seat taking a left turn on a green light, I tense and I grip the door. Every time. I don't remember some super safe left turn me and my best friend took once while listening to our favorite song and eating donuts. I'm sure that's happened, but I can't tell you for certain. Of all the thousands and thousands of left-hand turns I've experienced in my life, I can only recall one, and it is the one wherein I was hit. Similarly, it's not my friends who are still alive that keep me up at night. I didn't start drinking at 16 to drown out all the good things that had happened, though more good things had happened than bad. What folks often don't understand about the artist is that the artist often comes into their craft as a means of leaving or exploring some other place. Art is, if nothing else, a vehicle, taking both the artist and the audience to a specific destination and thus leaving a specific place behind. If we imagine that each poem or each metaphor is a foothold exiting a pit of fire, perhaps this constant question wouldn't be so constant. I mean, no one has ever happened upon a person trying to escape a fire and asked them, why are you always trying to escape that really hot thing that will inevitably kill you if you don't? For some people, the past is not so far off from this analogy. Every time I write a poem, it is a truce with my past. It is a truce with my memory agreeing that today, if for only today, it will not kill me. The etymological opposite of the word remember is not to forget. It is, in fact, dismember. And so any memory we have is the process of piecing lost or severed parts back together. Remember, it's not that I won't forget some things. It's that some things won't be forgotten. In Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, the doctor took many dismembered parts in creating his monster. He quite literally remembered this creature to life. In this sense, the monster is a memory. And it was this memory that killed the doctor, for he did not understand its strength. I must remember and rebuild and rename all this sorrow so I can find it inside of me, remove it, drag its wet body into the street, and then know when it returns that it is indeed grief and it has come for me again because I've felt it before. I've memorized its shape. I know the soft wisp against my cheek. I don't need to know joy in that way. Why don't you ever write about beautiful things? What is more beautiful than surviving? Why don't you ever write about joy? What is more joyous than the moment after surviving? I don't want to write about the chickadee singing in the branches. I just want to hear its song, and for a moment, not know what I know. I don't want to tell you about holding my partner's hand as we look out onto the Mississippi. That's my moment. I've survived everything I've survived to have the right to moments like that, to not have to explain them, to let them live in me and her only. I know joy too can be overwhelming, sometimes hard to explain, and perhaps in need of a poem. But I'm not the one. because I don't lose sleep over joy. Let it come. Let it come, and when it does, let it take hold of me. Let it be new each time. If there is a chemistry of joy, it is found in the shadow of all the things that I've lost. If there is a chemistry of joy, it is made of an aggregate of all this grief. Grief is a slow knife entering the side like a new bone, which becomes that, badly angled and out of place, but a part of you now. I can explain joy in a single word. I can explain joy by saying nothing. If grief were so easy, I wouldn't need to find all the words to describe this hilt cranked inside of me, this knob, which is the beginning of the hilt, of the knife, of the bone, of the artist, of the blacksmith, I've been hammering the same dark, metallic word for years. Grief, grief, grief. Do you want to know why I write about so much grief? Grief, are you sick of hearing about grief? Grief, grieve, grave, grim, grimace, ground into 1,000 shapes. It's the same scrap of glowing ore, of blood-leaded iron filing. You want to see how I can turn a knife into a key? How a single word opens me? How I let it in? Because it will enter regardless. I just show it where to go, where it kills me slowest. And the word becomes a knife, becomes a bone. I've been crafting myself a new skeleton out of all these words. I've been slowly moving back into my own body. How do you explain all that? How do you tell someone that your body is a cenotaph for all your dead friends? How do you resurrect the same image each day and let it live and then leave you alone? I don't know. I don't know. And perhaps it's not something to know, but something to learn a little bit more about each day. And so I'm here, carving away. And finally, there is room for joy.